I believe the best reason to write a book is because you have something that needs to be heard. You have something to say. And so the people who already know, like, and trust me, the people who've gotten benefit from my teaching and models and frameworks on the digital marketer side, they're going like, oh, holy crap, like you can help with this too? Yeah, I can. Great. The best way to plant a flag is with a book. There's almost no better way to do it than with a book. Habit changes everything. Right. And if we can get people to start utilizing the tools and getting results, that's when they'll talk. That's when they'll share.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Mr. Ryan Deiss. You don't know it yet, but we actually have royalty in the house today. Ryan Deiss, my gosh, the godfather of digital marketing, the guy that I've learned so much from over the years. I mean, we were just joking up before this interview started, way back before I even knew who digital marketer was, I was meeting Ryan Deiss and learning from Ryan Deiss all the way back in the, this might come up at some point, the number1 book system days. We're talking about books. It's like the OG business that you guys had. But just super, you've probably heard of them. You've probably heard of Digital Marketer or Traffic and Conversion Summit. That was like the first marketing conference that I ever went to. And then I'm actually speaking this year in January. So grab a ticket for Traffic and Conversion Summit. But he's also the founder and CEO of his new company. It's called the Scalable Company. All right. He's the author of multiple books. He's been on the podcast in the past. You can check out the past episode. We talked about the invisible selling machine. We also talked about his book, Digital Marketing for Dummies. But he's got a book coming up that we're going to talk about. It's called Get Scalable, the operating system for your business, the operating system your business needs to run and scale without you. So a lot that we can learn from Ryan on the digital marketing side, on the scaling of business side of things, way more than we'll have time to fit in 30 or so minutes, but we're going to try. So Ryan, welcome. Great to have you here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Good to be back. And I feel like calling me the Godfather, I get that now. It means I'm old. I'll take it.
No, it just means you're powerful.
There it is. Yeah, that's what I'm going to tell myself tonight. Thank you.
You say, honey, they call me the Godfather. It's not because I'm old. It's because I'm powerful.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to get away with any of that in my own house. So no, man, but it's great to be here and good to be talking about this stuff. It's been a wild ride, and I'm an open book. So let's do this thing.
Yeah, no pun intended. So why publish this upcoming book, Get Scalable? Like, where does this fit in with the business, with your brand, all that stuff?
So it fits in two ways. One, it's the book that I wish I would have had when I was actually scaling my companies. And so I believe the best reason to write a book is because you have something that needs to be heard. You have something to say. And I've written about marketing. I'm known as a marketer. And so to most of the people, if they know my name, then usually they know me as a marketer. The reality is that I've kind of been playing a marketer on TV for the past decade or so. Most of my life, most of my working life is spent running companies. And so I don't have a login to our, Meta account or our Google account or even our CRM or, I don't have logins to any of this stuff. Like, we've got teams that do these kinds of things. And while, I like to think I've still got some good stuff to say on the marketing front, on the copywriting front, I'm not in the trenches anymore. I'm running businesses and I'm running companies. And so this is my life, but I hadn't really taught or shared a whole lot about that side of the business. And yet, for running Digital Marketer for 13 plus years, teaching people how to grow, what I realized is that growth creates a new problem, and that problem is called scale. And so one, I was excited to do it because all I've ever wanted to do is talk about what I was doing. That's all I've ever done. In the early days of Digital Marketer, all I was doing was sharing what we were doing that was actually working. I've never been about, researching or theorizing or, running academic studies. All I've ever done is do stuff and then talk about it. But I hadn't talked about this because I felt like, but I'm a marketer. So it was kind of tough. It really took the pandemic. It took COVID for me to be like, screw it. Like, it's time to kind of share to the world what I've been working on for really the past decade or so, and all the stuff that I wish I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that we get asked, the questions that we get asked because growth creates a new problem. So that was kind of the first reason for the book. The second reason is, in 2016, and I'm only just now talking about this. In 2016, I had not one, not two, but three different companies hit the Inc. 505,000 lists in the same year. So not one company, multiple years in a row, but three different companies in our portfolio.
Like LeBron James, man. Not one, not two,
not two, but three. Yeah, so it sounds cool. And when I'm speaking somewhere, they'll be like, "Oh, multi Inc. 500," and it sounds really cool. Here's the reality of that. Of those three companies, one of them did incredibly well, continued to grow, continued to scale, had some spinouts and some exits, and did really great. Another one, the business partner that we had, the founder, the operator of that business, couldn't get out of their own way, and that company was sold in 2021, basically for scraps to our number one competitor. And that was a software as a service business in the real estate space. So you're talking about a massive opportunity squandered because we didn't know how to scale. We knew how to grow, but we didn't know how to scale. And then the third business, the business that was actually ranked higher than any of the other companies on the Inc. 500 list, out of all of our businesses, within 6 months of appearing on the list, we had lost $2 million and we had to lay off 180 people because we didn't know how to scale. And so realizing that growth is not scale and scale is not growth. I knew it was an important topic to talk about. And in doing some research, I found out that, two-thirds of the companies that make the Inc. 5000 list fail within 5 years. 2/3, man. That's worse. That's a worse failure rate than non-Inc. 5000 companies. So for all of those reasons, why I'm a growth guy, I'm a marketing guy, I'm a sales guy, I knew that growth wasn't enough, and we had to address the problems of scale. And so that's what I wanted to do with this book.
That's crazy. I guess in a lot of cases, the faster it goes up, the faster it goes down. And my brother always talked about, I think you know this, Ryan, for listeners who don't, like my brother plays in a pretty well-known rock and roll band, and they felt like they never got a break. And it took, it's like the classic 10-year overnight success. And he always told me, he's like, the longer it takes to build it, the longer it'll last, because your foundation is just so much deeper and stronger and all that stuff. Let's zoom out for just a second, Ryan. For those people who don't know, what's the Cliff Note, like big picture version of the Scalable company, and how long have you been working on this company?
Sure. So at its core, the Scalable company helps entrepreneurial founder-led businesses install operating systems so that the founder can achieve their ideal exit. So we're very kind of specific and particular on what we mean by an operating system. It's not just a meeting rhythm. It's not just here's how to set goals. So many of these business books that are out there, like, oh, you need to have systems in your business. So it's like, oh, so I need to have a couple of checklists, set some goals, and do some meetings. That's a part of it, but my God, it's not even close to most of it. And anybody who's read some of these books and tried to do some of these things know that it just doesn't work like they say it does. So we want to work with entrepreneurs directly to install these operating systems in the business so that the founder can achieve, like I said, what we refer to as their ideal exit. That could be exiting kind of the staff role and becoming a true CEO. Because a lot of entrepreneurs have the CEO title, but they function like a manager. They are not functioning like a CEO, not like a CEO should. It could be exiting the org chart completely, bringing in a president, a general manager, a COO, a CEO to run the day-to-day, and you only have your one direct report. It could be exiting the business completely. And so that's what the Scalable company does. And we work really closely with our clients. So it's kind of a pain in the butt because it's a pure services-based business. Like it's not just a course business. It's not a group coaching business. It is a more kind of one-on-one. But to tell a dirty little secret, the whole reason we launched the Scalable company, it's basically a front for private equity investments. At this stage in the game, I'm kind of done doing new startups and things like that. We want to identify business owners and entrepreneurs that we can partner with, invest in. And so a lot of this is just our opportunity to kind of get paid to do due diligence. So that's the Cliff's Note version of what Scalable is. Oh,
wow. That's super smart. I like that a lot. So what's your ideal customer look like? Is that based on a revenue amount or is that something else?
So it's usually based on, so revenue is definitely a component. What we find is that most businesses start entering what we call the swamp of scale at around $2 million in revenue. And it's really painful at like 3 to 5. Like at $3 to $5 million in revenue, that is when you're sort of in that messy middle. You're in the swamp of scale. You're too big to be small, too small to be big. And you kind of have a choice to make. You either need to kind of punt a little bit, retreat a little bit, systemize some things, and just have you and a very small core team and sort of stay in the $1 million to $3 million range. Have a boutique style business. Some would call it a lifestyle business. That term is used very pejoratively. I think it's great. I think as an entrepreneur, the perk is you can decide, like, what do you want your business to be? It's up to you. The mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make is we set about the journey that is scale without having a map on that. And we assume that everything that we had to go from 0 to 1 or 0 to 10, that same stuff is going to take us up, farther. We assume that it's one ever ascending mountain, and in reality, it's 2 mountains. There's the first mountain, which is loosely, 0 to $1 million, $2 million. But then what it takes if you want to basically go from 7 to 8 figures, and then by the way, it happens again. We find it happens on the 1s and the 3s. So you got $1 million and about $3 million. You got 10 million and about 30 million. Shows up again, kind of, between 80 and 100 million. There are certain areas where the thing that got you here ain't going to get you there. And that sounds cliche. There's a book by the same title because it's just true. And it just shows up. So our ideal client is somebody who is in that messy middle, in that swamp of scale. And I'd say they're our ideal client because they're feeling the pain. And usually you start to sense this when you get to like 10-ish employees, because that's when you kind of can't just manage through, individual conversations. You're
sheer
like
will and charisma.
It's exactly like it's kind of starting to become a mess. What we would rather do, so that's our ideal from like a sales and marketing perspective, because they're in pain. In reality, at between $500,000 to $1 million, if people would start to address some of these issues, then they would actually be able to scale much faster without the pain. But nobody does that, right? Nobody does that. It's very hard to convince somebody at that stage that this is what they need. They're just like, grow, 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 grow.
I don't want my vitamins, but I will talk to you in about $1.5 million in revenue when I need my pain pills.
Thank you. That's exactly it.
That's funny. Well, I guess tying back to this book, when did you start this company?
So this company was envisioned so let me backtrack. So I've always owned a number of different businesses, call it entrepreneurial, ADHD or whatever. I've never done just one thing. And again, that's one of those other things that people think is like really cool. In reality, I probably would be a lot wealthier had I just focused. It just isn't as much fun. It's not who I am. So I enjoy building holding companies and stuff like that. I always have. And so we had a portfolio of businesses that a lot of them were in consumer e-commerce, consumer media. We had events companies. So we had a number of different businesses in our portfolio, and we began to exit a lot of these businesses in 2018 and 2019. So like you mentioned Traffic and Conversion Summit, we sold a majority stake in Traffic and Conversion Summit to an events company that's owned by Blackstone, right? Along with a number of other ones. So we were sitting there at the end of 2019 thinking to ourselves, okay, all we really had left was digital marketer. And I didn't want to sell digital marketer, and people are like, oh, that's your baby. No, it's a good platform business. Out of digital marketer, many other businesses can be launched. So you don't, most of what we do, it's a goose and eggs model. So I will sell the eggs. I don't want to sell the goose. And so digital marketer was a goose. These media publishing companies, the brand companies, have a lot of value beyond what they might be valued in the marketplace. So we had this business and it was, okay, now what do we want to do? What do we want to do next? Like, what's the next big thing? And what I wanted to do was kind of build what we had at Digital Marketer for those next level entrepreneurs at Scalable. So I remember announcing to the entire team in December of 2019, 2020, we're going to be coming out there. We're launching this new business, the Scalable company. And it's going to be a new holding company. And we're going to be, basically doing what we did before in this, but in B2B. It's going to be amazing. And I'll see you all next year. And, we kind of got started on some stuff. Obviously, the pandemic happened. And I think like a lot of people, I sort of panicked. I hit the freak out button. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew, in retrospect, had we just continued doing what we were doing, it would have been fine. But I was like, okay, now is not the time to do something new.
Right.
Now is the time to focus, to make sure that the team is going to be okay. And so technically it launched in 2020. We sort of rolled it out at the end of 2020. Really, we didn't get it going in any real form or fashion until 2021. And then I made the stupidest mistake ever. I didn't follow my own advice or my own freaking book. I decided that I got to skip steps because I'm smart and I've done this before. And so I basically spent 2021 and the first quarter of 2022, treating this startup like it was a scale up, and over operationalizing it, overdoing all this stuff when I should have just been running the playbooks that I know to run. So that was kind of a good lesson. It's now nice to be on the other side of that and actually building operating systems for for the operating system company.
Yeah, it's a good takeaway. All right, 2021, the business kind of really gets going. I guess, do you see this as kind of well, actually, no, hold on. I want to ask some questions around the book stuff, but I want to take a step back. You said you called it, what did you say? Goose and eggs, or like a platform business. What makes a platform business versus not? How do you look at that?
Sure. So a platform business is a business that can easily birth other businesses. And so I use the kind of the goose and eggs analogy. Let me use a different analogy. I hate to mix metaphors, but here you go. You're smart, and I think your listeners are smart. You'll be able to keep up. So another way to think about it is like a solar system. So at the center, we have our holding company, okay? And our holding company, think about that like the sun. And so the holding company, it basically just holds our interest in these other businesses. There's not really a lot of assets sitting there, except for our kind of general awesomeness, right? Mine and my business partners, like the knowledge that we do, I guess to a certain extent, rests in that holding company. But the holding company doesn't have brands, it doesn't have IP, it doesn't have, any of that traditional, it's just an entity that holds other entities. Now we've got a management company that's connected to it that handles all of the payroll and finance and accounting across all of our other companies. But in general, it's not building and creating a lot of unique value. The value creation happens at the planet level. And so at the planet, that's where we're thinking about what are these platform companies that can very easily birth other brands. So think about those as moons. So let me give you an example of Digital Marketer. So Digital Marketer was a planet, and orbiting around Digital Marketer was a moon called Traffic and Conversion Summit. There are also certifications, which is a separate thing. And there's a licensed practitioner. Any one of these moons could get, if they got big enough, eventually spin out and kind of become their own planet, right? And so what we're happy to do is to sell off the moons. But the planets themselves, if they have the ability to create new moons, because they're media and they're publishing, we don't necessarily want to sell that. And so the Scalable company is another platform, business that not only do we have the ability to create additional moons, but we can also acquire them in.
Private equity spinoffs. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I guess like is a square or rectangle a square, or like one can be the one, but not the other. Are all platform businesses in your eyes like media and publishing businesses, or that just happens to be the type of platform business that Digital Marketer is?
They don't have to be. It's the business model that lends itself to it the best. Because if you think about it, at its core, any business has to solve the first challenge that any business needs to solve is the aggregation of attention, right? That is truly the first. A lot of people think, I've got to come up with a product or something to sell. You do, and certainly you need to know that you can deliver value. But if you can aggregate attention, then you can monetize that attention. If you never create a product or service, you can monetize that attention in its simplest form through advertising. Right. And so the most critical business challenge that must be solved is the aggregation of attention. And you're either going to do that in the form of advertising, where you're basically paying somebody else who's aggregated the attention, or you're going to aggregate your own attention, or a combination of both. And so platform companies that are both aggregating attention and monetizing attention, they just become this truly, there's a lot of mass there, and it can suck other things into it. And so if you think about Procter and Gamble, for example, P&G, basically, if you look at just about any consumer brand that's on any shelf in any grocery store, it's probably owned by Procter and Gamble. So what is the attention that they've aggregated? They've aggregated the attention of the buyer reps at all the major retailers. So P&G comes out with another product, and, they've got great advertising relationships and things like that. But what they can do is call up, all the largest grocery stores and Walmart and say, hey, so this, this right next to the Dial soap, we want you to take, the 2 inches next to it and slot this product in as well. Boom, instant distribution. So now, is P&G a media company? No. That's why I'm using that as an example of one that doesn't. It doesn't have to, but a platform business is any business that is effectively aggregating and monetizing attention such that it is becoming its own kind of self-fulfilling engine. But more times than not, it looks like media. Most of the brands that you see out there, like The Rock and people like that, they're that have launched, and George Clooney, right, who've launched, whether it's like liquor brands, Ryan Reynolds, right, with meant like he's the planet.
Got it.
That's kind of the cool thing that you're seeing happening with a lot of these celebrities. They're realizing, holy crap, I've aggregated all this attention. Why monetize my attention through movie deals exclusively? You know, well, I can have that company, that my management company that does that. Why not also have my own brands and create multiple planets swirling around?
And creating influencer brands that aren't necessarily tied to the name, which I feel like is one of the, I've obviously learned a lot from you over the years, man. I feel like that's one of the early things was you talked about, hey, don't tie your company to your name. It's like early days, it was the Ryan Deiss show. Then it became Digital Marketer, and Digital Marketer was very front and center. And then obviously now building a brand on as scalable, like it's been cool to see that evolution. And now it feels like that's catching very mainstream with all the influences you're talking about, like these platform businesses. They're realizing like, okay, I don't need to create this under my name. In fact, it's going to be way more valuable if I don't, and I can use my name and my influence to create this moon or whatever, but it's not necessarily tied to them. I hope you're loving this episode so far. So if you're serious about writing and publishing your book, we would love to chat with you and help create a custom plan. All right, so all you need to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. Schedule a 45-minute consultation with one of the experts on my team. All right, let's implement what you're learning in this episode and let's see how we can help with your book. Go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. I want to, maybe finally circle back to this book. This is really fun, nerding out on the business stuff. Do you see this as almost like a reinvention? Like something you mentioned at the very beginning of this our chat was people still talk to me like, or refer to me as like the digital marketer guy or the marketing guy. Is this book almost like a public coming out party of like, hey, scalable, like almost like something that you're using to reinvent and change the narrative, or is that a misread?
Yeah, a little bit. So I don't want to completely lose the marketing aspect of it. And so rather than a pivot, I almost see it more as a maturation, because that's how it is for me, right? I'm not saying that marketing is bad. Don't call me a marketer. Like I'm not, in no way, shape, or form am I, am I ashamed of, my marketing past, right? Marketers are still some of my favorite people on planet Earth. So it's not one of these things like, you got Matthew McConaughey that had to completely slough off his like rom-com image.
Oh,
so he could be a serious
yeah.
actor, right? That's not this, right? That's not this. Like I'm happy to still do the rom-coms. And so what it is it's more trying to expose people who already know me as saying like, I can do this now too. Like I can help you in this area as well. And so the people who already know, like, and trust me, the people who've gotten benefit from, my teaching and models and frameworks on the digital marketer side, they're going like, oh, holy crap, like you can help with this too? Yeah, I can. Great. What it is really doing though is opening us up to a new audience that we didn't have before. And so the majority of the leads, the majority of like the conversations that our team is having with people, they don't know who Ryan Deiss is. And I'm throwing up the air quotes because speaking, for those of you who are just listening, because speaking of yourself as a person is freaking douchey. They don't know who Ryan Deiss is. They don't necessarily know or care about digital marketer. And so I think that we're accomplishing a bit of a broadening of the audience for the people who do know the Ryan Deiss and the digital marketer brand, while at the same time bringing in and attracting a totally new audience. But yeah, I mean, to you, and I don't have to tell you this, man, you're the master of this. The best way to plant a flag is with a book. There's almost no better way to do it than with a book. So yes, it is serving that purpose.
Cool. And for those who want to hear about planting that flag for previous businesses, go back to our previous interview. We talked about, it was really interesting, the invisible selling machine. Like when we talked about how you created that book, and I still talk about that interview, how you did the multiple webinars and you catered to what worked well for you, which was creating webinars and then using that to create chapters and stuff like that. But I mean, that's been an anchor point, and then maybe less so, but to some extent, digital marketing for dummies is probably more of a brand play. But I guess when it comes to launching the scalable book, like how are you launching this and what are you changing kind of based on what you've learned from previous books?
So I'm not launching it. And this is kind of strategic. And you can tell me if you think this is stupid or not. So I'm on the record. We don't have results yet. But when I was going back and doing research on the business books that have performed the best, the ones that make the list. And it goes back to what you said, your brother's comment, right? Building that foundation. There are so many people I know who have come out and have launched their book into a group of people that nobody knew who they were, and they got a bunch of sales, and then it was done. I remember back, again, this helps like going the Godfather thing. So I remember when Tim Ferriss first launched the 4-Hour Work Week, right? I was one of the people who Tim cold emailed and was like, oh, I would love for you to, talk about my book and do this kind of stuff. And he held like a special event and invited me and a bunch of folks out for it. Like, again, this is 100 years ago. But the magic of that launch, and you've seen this with some other books that have come around, Alex Hormozy with his first book, $100 million Offers. It was the same thing with that. It was the kind of book that had a unique hook, had a unique twist, and people were excited to share it because we knew about something that nobody else knew about. And it was kind of everybody's dirty little secret that we then got to share. So it actually increased the status to know about this book when other people don't. And when I've seen books, come out that have done well, it was more of a grassroots type thing. It was because not everybody knew about it at the same time. The recommendation of the book was an increase of status on the part of the person who's recommending it. Mm-hmm. Now compare that to when Tim came out and launched, I think, 4-Hour Body. Well, that was this massive campaign and this whole big production, which made sense. He had the audience to support it. But at that point, if I was going to recommend the 4-Hour Body to somebody, I'd seem like a freaking idiot. Like, of course, I've heard of that book. It was everywhere. So there's no social benefit in recommendation. And I wanted to write a book that would be recommended. I wanted to write a book that would be referred. I wanted to write a book that if somebody said, yeah, I'm kind of struggling, we're sort of stuck, I need to, improve my operating, system. Somebody say, oh, well, Get Scalable is the book if you want to get scalable, right? It was why the title, like I can write sexier titles than that, but I wanted it to speak to the end result. And I wanted it, the entire marketing strategy is how do we drive referrals? How do we drive, references? And, you should check this out. And so this launch is going to take place over the next 12 to 18 months. I want it to be everybody's dirty little secret for a good long while.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you practically do that? Obviously write a great book, kind of the first step, but is there anything that you're doing kind of to make sure that the grassroots long tail thing is really good?
Yeah. Stuff like what we're doing right now, so, I want to be on a number of podcasts talking about this. And your audience is authors. So, we can get a little bit meta with this stuff, but I'm not sending out a ton of emails about this book. I've got a big email list, many of them, but I don't want to do massive email blasts, about this book. I would much rather people find out about it through somebody else. And then they get kind of reintroduced to me, even the people on my own list. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it's going out. It's blocking and tackling. It's a lot of freaking work. Mm-hmm. I want to be, doing 100 different podcasts and interviews over the next 12 months. It's going to be a lot of work, but that's what I believe will allow it to gain traction within different audiences if the book is worthy. And I believe it's why I've tried really, really hard to write a great book that somebody, when they recommend it to somebody else, the person is going to be like, thank you so much. This is amazing. This is exactly what I needed. This is better than, even what I thought it was going to be. So step one, like you said, is to write a great book, because that's the kind of book that somebody feels enthusiastic about recommending. And I wanted to write a book that was designed to be recommended, which I think is a good strategy when you're creating your first book in a new market. At some point when you got a big audience, go nuts. But that's kind of that strategy.
That makes sense. And it's something that Hal Elrod talks about is, building virality or kind of a recommendation engine inside of your book, right? And his take, which is interesting and different and not really applicable for a lot of people, but his take is, okay, can you change behavior in a meaningful way? Obviously with the Miracle Morning, it's through a morning routine. And then that is such an anchor point that when people talk about or reference or whatever, they point back to that thing. And then he builds virality into the book itself by saying, hey, the best way to implement your Miracle Morning is to have somebody else do it with you for 30 days and make sure they get a copy of the book, right? So it's like, how do you turn one book into 3 purchases or whatever else, which I think it's why I really like this category of book that you're writing, because this is the perfect type of book that a CEO reads and then buys for their whole company. Like, I can't tell you how, it's like we've seen businesses get built on the back end of these books. It's like scaling up, traction, profit first, like teach a methodology, and then you market to the CEO, and then market to the CEO through kind of grassroots, what you're saying, like CEO to CEO, like, hey, I want to increase my status. Hey, Ryan, have you heard of this Get Scalable book? Wink, wink, don't tell anyone. I think you're going to really like it. And then you buy it, read it, buy it for your whole team. Is there anything that you embedded in the book or in the market, grassroots blocking and tackling marketing, that you feel like will grease the wheels of that shareability?
So I don't know that we did a great job within the book of doing things to increase the shareability, because I actually wanted the emphasis in the book. So much of this book is built around our tool set. And literally, like, what is in this book, in the flap of the book, like inside here, it's like, okay, here's all of our tools, right? The tools that are in that book and this book is what I would have sold in the past for $2,000. Mm-hmm. If this were another one, like that tool set and the videos around it, no joke, as a course, could, and some would say should be sold for a $2,000 thing. I'm giving it away in the book because what we want to generate is inbound lead flow from book readers, because I know the book readers are the most likely to implement, the people who are the most likely to implement, because what we want, man, first and foremost, are deals. So we want deal flow. I'm not trying to turn this book into an international bestseller, because going back to the ideal client profile, there's 5.91 million businesses in the US that have more than one employee, but less than 100. So that's kind of the TAM for this book. It's the total addressable market for this book. It's a lot, but compared to like a diet book where the total addressable market's about 8 billion people, it's less. So I'm mostly interested in getting the right people reading it in their own time. And so the way to accomplish that is sort of to hold back and have it be the right person's dirty little secret. But what you said is dead on. We're already getting people buying, who pre-bought, because it doesn't come out until December 5th, but people who've kind of pre-bought it are coming in and saying, can I buy a case of books? I want to, hand these out to the team. We want to execute this whole thing, as well as we're building an army of licensed practitioners. So people who we've licensed on this methodology who are going to go out and take it into different businesses, and, they're buying multiple copies of the book to hand out as well.
Mm-hmm. Got it. That's cool. And I'm looking on the site, and I'm seeing tools like the CEO dashboard, growth engine builder, expense ratio analyzer, 12Q planning canvas. Are those the type of tools that you're mentioning that are like embedded throughout the book?
Yep.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. And I mean, you just go to the thing and download it. Like, there you go. And it's weird for me, right? Because I've cut my teeth and so much of my career has been selling courses and IP. So to package this stuff up and say, no, we're going to give it away. But I didn't want any friction between the people reading the concept and then getting in and starting to use it. Because to your point, habit changes everything. And if we can get people to start utilizing the tools and getting results, that's when they'll talk. That's when they'll share. So I guess I guess we did maybe that maybe is where the shareability comes into play. Hey, you should check out this tool. I got it from the book.
It's the tools and the worksheets, right? You give away the tools and the worksheets, and you sell the execution help, right? And which makes a lot of sense. And I hate to bring this up because I don't know if this is like a good comparison or not, but it's just like other business growing books in the scaling world that I've read in the past. It's like they've got the worksheets, and I start doing them, and I start embedding, and then you put it in your team rhythms. And even to this day, that I'd have CEOs like, hey, what's that? You turn that thing into like a Google Doc. Can you send me that? And then they get it, and then they read the book, and then they buy the book. And so just like, it really creates that grassroots virality, which I think is kind of what you're going for here. I want to go a couple quick questions and then we'll wrap up. First one would be, we got a question from one of our listeners, Rob, says, do you have any advice on promoting a book when you may not have a huge existing platform or following? So I'm not Ryan Deiss, and you've kind of already talked about this. You may have already answered this, but yeah, what's your take?
I mean, so I think it's twofold. I think so we're going to be making a significant investment in Amazon ads. So we're going to advertise, and a lot of people think like, oh, I don't have a big audience. Okay, buy it. Like, go advertise. I have a big audience and a big list because we spend a lot of money on advertising, and then you'll figure out how to monetize it. You spend the money, you'll figure out how to monetize it. So that is the first thing I would do. And then also, doing everything that you can to get on podcasts with the right type of people. Like, so I'm not trying to get on, do interviews with people who maybe have the biggest audiences. I want the right kind of people who I think will actually read the book and consume it, and try to be intentional about where do I start and then where do we finish up. But I think, I am not the playbook on book sales. That, you got the thing for that, but everybody underrates advertising, and I would advertise the bejesus out of the book. And then I think the decision to make is, do you want to advertise it and sell it yourself so you get the lead and you can do a book funnel and all that other stuff? Or do you want to advertise it to drive sales on a platform like Amazon? We're choosing to we're choosing to do both because we have the resources to do both. But if I had to pick, I would probably pick trying to drive, doing some basic Amazon ad spend and getting on those podcasts. But if I were just getting started, I needed to make some money to put back in, I'd sell the book direct from my own site, get them in my funnel, sell them higher ticket services, and use that to fuel kind of more the brand play and the expansion.
That makes sense. And I mean, you also have the ability to do that because if I'm not mistaken, you're essentially self-publishing this, but through your brand. And so through your media, you're basically publishing it through your media company. So you own all the rights and everything. So you have the ability to do book funnels around it, to sell on Amazon, to kind of do whatever you want. And that, yeah, nice.
And I've done published books, man. I mean, there's a place for it, but I would way rather have the control than the advance. So
wow, I've heard a lot of ways. I've heard it put a lot of ways. I've never heard it put that way. That's good. I like that. Cool. Well, guys, if you want to submit a question or a guest idea for the future, just comment on this video on the YouTube channel or submit a review on the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts with your question or guest that you want to see on the podcast. Ryan, closing question. What would be your parting piece of advice for someone who's thinking about writing a book, kind of knowing what you know now, doing it to start a platform or to scale your platform company? What would be kind of your parting piece of advice?
I wouldn't wait to start talking about the stuff until you write the book. And so every book that I've ever written began life. I mean, you mentioned the Invisible Selling Machine. I mean, that began life as a webinar and a series of webinars. Plenty of people, back in the day blogged first. I think it's important to get ideas out there into the world and to let those ideas get kind of beat up. Let them get slapped around a little bit. Have people disagree with you and see how you can defend them. Have people express uncertainty or confusion and come and like talk to them and follow up, and they're like, oh, and see their eyes light up. So I believe that certainly if we're talking about nonfiction books, I think that every book should begin as a talk, as a webinar. It's the idea. The power of the book is in the power of the idea, and the idea is only as good as the feedback that you've received by putting it out there into the world. So please don't hold it back like it's something uber ultra precious. Nobody remembers. The world doesn't, don't just have this as like some precious artifact that you want to put out there. Just writing is creating. And there's nothing I've done that's harder than writing a freaking book. It's just like I'm a perfectionist and I pain over everything. I cannot imagine if I was trying to just sit there and start from a blank page, it wouldn't get done. So no blank pages. Start getting your ideas out there. Let the world smack them around. Don't take it personally. Be appreciative of the feedback. Get better from it. And then when you still don't think you're ready, write the book anyway.
Nice. Awesome. Well, guys, grab a copy of the book. It's called Get Scalable, the operating system your business needs to run and scale without you. By the time you're watching or listening to this, it just came out. Or maybe you're listening to this way after this podcast was released, and it's definitely out there. Grab a copy. Ryan, where can people go to get a copy of the book or to find out more about the Scalable company or whatever would be most helpful?
Yeah, so the book will be, links and all the stuff to Amazon. I mean, so there's a little website called Amazon.com. It sells books. Maybe you've heard of it. But yeah, hopefully if you go to Amazon.com and type in Get Scalable, it'll show up there. GetScalable.com is going to be the book site. But if you want help actually implementing the stuff in the book, I mean, there's links inside the book about that. But the main corporate site for the company itself is scalable.co. Wish we could have got the .com, but didn't. But scalable.co is where you can go to see more about what we're doing on the Scalable front.
Cool. That's awesome. Ryan, you're the man. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you could be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number one, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number two, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Number two, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number three, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number three, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode.